Good evening. I would like to welcome everyone to this public information meeting dated November the 28th. This open meeting, this is a public information session held for the purpose of public engagement on certain topics with the public, council, and staff. During a public information session, no member discusses or otherwise deals with any matter in any way that materially advances the business or decision-making of the council. At this time, I'd like to ask Mrs. Pearson, Clerk Operations Clerk, for the land acknowledgement, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. We acknowledge that this land on which we are gathered today is part of the ancestral land of the Chippewa, Ottawa, and Potawatomi peoples, referred to collectively of the Anishinaabe. The town of Petrolia is located on the lands associated with the Huron Treaty number 29 of 1827. We express gratitude for the land where we live, work, and play, and we are committed to working respectfully with the land and the Indigenous peoples who have called this land home.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. The purpose of this meeting is to afford the public an opportunity to receive information relating to our 2023 water and sewer rates and providing input to town staff and council. This meeting is specific to 2023 water and sewer rates. Any unrelated comments shall not be brought forward at this meeting. Public wishing to address council on another topic are most welcome, and this can be completed through the clerk's office for inclusion with the next council meeting agenda. If you require any clarification, please contact the clerk's office in advance of your submission or presentation during this public information session. At this time, I'd like to introduce the council before you. On my far right is Mrs. Welsh, on your left, Mr. Ross O'Hara, Mr. Clark, Mrs. Deb Patel or Councillor Patel, Councillor Field, and Councillor Hyatt. Mrs. Pearson, would you introduce the staff present, please?
Thank you, Your Worship. So I will begin with our Director of Operations, Mr. Mike Thompson, our Director of Facilities and Community Services, Mr. Dave Menzies, our Director of Marketing, Arts and Communication, Ms. Larissa Ellsworth, our CAO and Treasurer, Mr. Rick Charlebois, and I am your clerk, Mandy Pearson.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. At this time, we have Mr. Rick Charlebois, our CAO Treasurer, is going to make a presentation regarding the 2023 public session on water and sewer rates. And I'd like to ask council if they'd like to move down to the seats, please. We can leave everything up here. What's that?
You're going to want to put it on your screen.
No, coordinated. Is this working? Oh, yeah. Okay, thank you. Well, welcome everybody. As the mayor said, we're going to go through the proposed 2023 water and sewer rates. This slide here is only 3% of the world's water that is freshwater, drinkable water. And actually Canada is very fortunate. We have actually 20% of the world's fresh drinking water. A bit of background. So in May of 2000, there was a major water tragedy, if you recall, in Walkerton. 6 people died and over 2,000 people got sick. Since then, municipal water and sewer organizations, they're operated separately or isolated from the rest of the organization. So one of the things that was happening was Walkerton was using some of their water and sewer funds to fund other things. Now it's like for us, it's like having three separate companies: water, sewer, and all the other stuff. It's challenging to forecast water and hence sewer because like all municipalities, we assume any water that goes into a property, it also leaves the property through sanitary or storm sewer. So we use the water usage to calculate the sewer bills. It's difficult to figure out and forecast the water because of weather conditions. A dry or wet summer can have a major impact. Water conservation, town growth, etc. When I put this presentation together, our water and sewer revenue were tracking about 5% behind our 2020 forecast. And with our water and sewer rate fee, the town would be at risk and our rates would need to increase. You're probably all aware that the CPI for Ontario and actually Canada for the past year is 7%. Here's our water rates from 2017 and sewer rates from to 2022. So you can see in 2021, council froze the water and sewer rates because of COVID. Everybody a break on their water and sewer rates. And then 22, we went with a 2% increase. In 2017 to 2019, council actually lowered the sewer rates. We got a big grant and that helped us to lower the rates for a while. Proposed water sewer rates for 2023 is 4% for each, and then 3% and 2%. We try to have a target for our water rates and our tax rates for council to show them how we think things are going. And there's a few notes down there. These water and sewer rates, they'll be in our draft 2023 municipal fee schedule, which will be seeking council approval. That's on the agenda for tonight. The CPI, as I mentioned, was almost 7%. That was to the end of October. Most economists now are suggesting for 2023 about a 4 or 5% CPI, and everybody's hoping, including the economists, by 2025 we'll be back to sort of around a 2, maybe 3%. That's what the Bank of Canada, that's their target, to have our inflation in the country be at 2 to 3%. And COVID sort of threw a wrench into that, so hopefully we'll get back on track. And there's things that can happen, such as a COVID or a huge increase in inflation. So these are just our targets, and next year, hope earlier next year, because there's an election next year, probably in end September, early October, we'll be doing this presentation for 2024. This slide here, what I put here is from 2019 to 2022. It's the cumulative inflation, CPI. And so it's what, 14.7%. Yeah. And for our cumulative water rates for that period, it's 6.9%. Just to show you the difference in inflation over the past 4 years. And then for sewer, because our rates actually went down in 2019 by 5%, and then the increases that we had, and it froze for a year in 2021. So it's the 14.7% for the CPI, and our actual cumulative sewer rate increases or change is actually there's negative. So it's just a little bit below zero for that same 4-year period. Should have made those numbers a little bigger. Sorry about that. Make sure I got the right side. Yeah. Water rates. So we recently finished an $8 million capital project at the water treatment plant. For that project, we actually received a $7 million grant. It was the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund grant that we got. actually, the thing we always say is the good thing is we think we have the oldest water treatment plant in all of Ontario, if not Canada. The worst thing is we think we have the oldest water treatment plant in Ontario, Canada. We're having a tour actually for council next week, I think it is. And I'd say we basically have a new water treatment plant, which is great. It'll last for many years ahead. The grant that we got, we have 3 other water municipality users, main ones, Enniskillen, Oil Springs, and Donufemia. We all went together and did a grant submission. And then earlier this year, we received a federal and provincial grant for 11.8 million to replace the water treatment plant, the intake, the big pipe that goes out into Lake Huron. And that's a $16.2 million project. That'll take about 5 years for us to complete that. Again, this was a joint grant submission with our municipal water partners. Our intake, it's at the end of its useful life. It's 80 years old and needs to be replaced. Here's the for that grant for the intake. So there's the capital cost, estimated cost, 16.2 million. Federal and provincial contributions for a total of 11.8 million. So the additional, the shortfall there, that'll be up to Petrolia to cover that cost. And just talks about the timeline there. So by October 26th, we should be done. But with COVID's still impacting anybody that does any construction. Realize it's impacting the prices, but it's also impacting. There's a limit or constraint on getting stuff constructed these days, and hopefully that'll clear up shortly. Water rates. So for the shortfall in the grant or the additional funding that we have to find, 4.3 million, and then if we look at our capital for the next 10 years, it's another 5.9 million. Most of that's for roads, and that'll take us up to over 10 million. And we've been building up the water reserve because we knew we had to replace our intake. So we've gone from having a reserve of just over 500,000 to the end of 2021. The last audit, it's 1.1 million to help pay towards that the water intake. We don't anticipate any major change to our operating costs over the planning period. The the High Park, it's called Tilray, was the main company. It closed down last fall. So that's reduced the water usage for Enniskillen. I haven't heard yet whether anybody's taken it over, but somebody will probably take that over eventually. That will help with our water usage. And we also have future residential land development. That'll help also relieve some funding pressure because water, like sewer, very capital intense operations. So if we have something that's very capital intense or fixed costs intense, the more volume we can get, the more it spreads the cost around. Sewer. So we received a $14 million grant to replace our wastewater treatment plant. We just finished that off in 2020. That project was about $21 million. Our 10-year planning horizon for capital. So we need 9.5 million, and a lot of that's for road reconstruction, the sewer part of the roads, the sanitary, and the storm. And there's another 2.8 million of other capital requirements. And again, the future residential land development. Again, if more usage, it'll help spread our fixed cost around. This here is our wastewater treatment plant. Just wanted to show you some of the interesting things we did. We repurposed the admin building of the old water treatment plant. It's now our fire training station and training center. And we also took another big part of the building and set it up for storage, for town storage, and for storage for the wastewater treatment plant. Okay, this is a quick summary. So that's proposing 4% for water, 4% for sewer, and our targets are 2% and 3% for the 2 out years. And this is a little summary of sort of our strategic approach we try to take, try to be flexible, dynamic strategic plan. We got a roadmap. We've had 10 years sort of capital and financial plan for probably the past 8 years or so, which has helped us a lot with our planning, helps us to be able to influence, us being council, influence rather than be influenced, facilitates innovation, creativity, collaboration, and we link our long-term plan to our operating and capital budgets on an annual basis. And that's all my presentation. Glad to entertain any questions anybody might have.
Oh, thank you, Jeepers.
Thank you, Mr. Charlebois. I think we'll at this time, I'll ask if there's anyone here that has any questions for Mr. Charlebois regarding his presentation. Okay, well, no, we're going to get to that. The next thing I'd like to do on the agenda is just to ask Mrs. Pearson, did we receive any written requests regarding this meeting?
Thank you, Your Worship. No, we did not receive any written information in advance of tonight's session.
Thank you. And at this time, I'd like to ask any members of the public, if you would like to address this council, please do so now. Come on up. Yeah, just come up to the mic, please. Yeah, no, come on up to the mic and just state your full name and address, please.
Chantal Fortin. You'll probably know me. 367 Eureka Street. I still don't understand how you justify 4% increase. Like, my apologies, you're not the best public speaker, and neither am I. But, sorry. So I was trying to read along with your presentation there and, listen to what you were trying to say, but I don't get how you justify 4%. Maybe 2% would be more fair.
Okay, I'll just going through the Mr. Charlebois, would you like to address that, please?
No, I did not. No. Yeah, but you said you've got great, that was already done, and the yes, and you have a grant for that as well, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, Alright. Well, I'm not asking for free. I'm just wondering why it's such a big jump from like 2017 to 2022. And now all of a sudden you want to jump it to 4% for both water and sewer. You know, if I want to water my gardens, I'm still paying sewer rates. It's not going into the sewer.
Yeah, I think if I can step in, I think you've made your point, and I think we're all aware of that. I think we should leave it at that. This will be discussed by this council.
Yep.
And then they will debate it at that time. But I think your point is well taken, that you have a concern of the 4%.
Okay,
So I think if that's okay, we'll leave it at that.
Yeah. I'll just say, I think 2% would be fair, but 4% seems extreme.
Great. All
Thank you.
Thank you for coming to address council. Is there anyone else wishing to address council at this time? If not, I'll ask council if you have any questions regarding that presentation. Any questions at all regarding this? Okay, seeing none, what I will. Oh, yes, Councillor Hyatt, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just have a question in terms of development costs. What's the ratio of like sewer costs to water costs? Like, I'm assuming one of the two costs is more expensive. Which of the two is it more expensive, and how is the ratio of those two?
Yeah, thank you for that. I'll ask either Mr. Shalom or Mr. Thompson. I think there's the water is a charge, and then the sewage is based on, it used to be a percentage, but I don't think it is anymore. Do you want to address that either? Okay, Mike, if you'd like, there, Mr. Thompson.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
So more times than not, the biggest cost of construction, for example, during the infill, during all next year, greenfield, and then go down. No, the majority of cost of that reconstruction is still. Most of the streets, for example, there's very little stuff. So if there is anything, field lateral, the other side, you know. So the breakdown of the structure, the higher cost to the supervision. And then followed by the sanitary sewers in town, were all placed in the mid-70s, they're built down, and they're all PVC pipe, and built last. So many years. So that's the majority.
Councillor Hyde, are you okay with that, or do you have a rebuttal?
No, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Charlebois, go ahead. Thank you, Mr. Charlebois. I'll ask one more time. Anything else from this council? Any questions? Seeing none, I will declare this public meeting closed. Thank you for coming, everyone. The council will re-adjourn at 7 o'clock.